Welcome to Sleep In Cinema with Gareth and Craig. We are so excited because today we have on the line a wonderful documentary filmmaker, Katie Dellamaggiore, who has a great new film called Small Town Universe that is coming to play at the Sidewalk Film Festival. Previously, after watching that film, I had to go back and watch Brooklyn Castle. Absolutely wonderful film as well. And it's interesting to compare and contrast those two. I might ask you a little bit about that. But the first question I just wanted to ask you is, this small town universe really focuses on this amazing satellite that's in Green Bank, West Virginia, and the people who live there, the scientists, and that community. How did you get involved in this story?
About 10 or 11 years ago, I had just finished making a film called Brooklyn Castle, which you guys had mentioned. And right after that, my husband and I, who were partners on that film, we had two children back to back, like two babies under 2 years old, after also having the baby of the film that we made together. And so it was really hard to kind of get motivated to kind of do that again, to like figure out how to make another film together. And at the same time, my mom had just died also while I was pregnant with one of my children. So it was a very kind of feel all the feelings kind of time in our lives. And there was this moment where I was like really kind of feeling very annoyed with my cell phone. It was like almost I was relying on it too much because of having two babies who I was home with all day, and the internet was just exploding with like negativity, and I was like, I hate this thing, but yet I can't get off it. And also I really just missed my mom's calls, so I was like, I hate my cell phone. And so one night Nelson and I were sitting around just like brainstorming, thinking of like different ideas for films. And so I was like, well, what if there was a town without cell phones? Wouldn't that be cool? And so I Googled it, and it was Green Bank, West Virginia. And so I'd never heard of it before, and was just like immediately struck by the idea of like, what would it be like to live in a town without cell phones? But then the film evolved into something more than that. As you saw, like it became more about the community and the science and kind of how the community was connected by science. But that was kind of where it all began, was with my disgust with my cell phone.
Man, I feel you.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're both parents. That's how we met, actually. It was through the
cool.
Alabama Waldorf School. And I don't know
cool.
if you're familiar with the Waldorf philosophy of no screen
No
time.
technology.
Yeah.
I know it. Yeah, that's great.
And I remember watching the scene where the two boys were playing in the woods. And I went,
Yeah.
that's like there's like a big town of Waldorf kids.
A whole town of Waldorf kids.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I can see. Thank you for telling us that backstory, because it really feels, again, very contemplative and just a different pacing than your previous film, which had this, this amazing kind of build up with competition and the cast, with the chess scenes. Whereas this, it just really mirrored that the people who live there, like everything slows down. You're able to observe things in a different way. I mean, could you maybe walk us through that process for you of how maybe where you were and then the actual location helped influence the way you made the film?
Yeah, that's a really good, interesting insight there. I think, the pacing of Brooklyn Castle is quite different from Small Town Universe, but I think the one thing that they do share in common is that there's multiple characters who all share a space in common, or like are part of the same community, right? But it's a balance, trying to make films where there are multiple characters experiencing like all individual storylines. It's quite hard. I don't know why I tried to do it again, but so yeah, that does share that in common. But there was no kind of ticking clock in Small Town Universe, right? Like Brooklyn Castle, there's like this kind of like the pacing of competition that kind of keeps the whole engine going. And I think it was like really challenging to figure out what that was going to be in Small Town Universe. There is this drama of impending budget cuts affecting the telescope, and that was dramatic. But I think at a certain point, like me and Nelson, who's the editor on the film, like had to let go of this this idea that we had to kind of keep that pacing up, and that it was okay for people to kind of settle in and just be. Yeah, so just kind of trusting that this film could just take a slower pace, and that part of that actually would be the experience of actually being in a place that was a bit quieter and a bit slower, that the audience could actually be in that place when they're watching the film also.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I loved, because you did have to. I've been saying this about a lot of documentaries. It was kind of a 101 of the subject, and I love that animation is used to kind of give everyone an idea of what this telescope is and what's going on, and how it works. Can you tell us how that came about? Like, who did the animation? How did you have that idea at the beginning to draw it out, to kind of give that explanation within the documentary with the animation?
Yeah, I knew that like a lot of these topics about like radio astronomy and SETI would be topics that hopefully some people didn't know anything about, right? Like if we were going to reach an audience that wasn't just scientists. So yeah, I had to learn about it too. I knew nothing about radio astronomy before making the film. So we wanted to, let people feel like they could understand it and like not be intimidated by it and be like, oh, cool. Like I understand that science too now. And also like one of our main characters, Ellie, is like really great at like breaking things down and making it really like as a science communicator, she's really good at like making complex things feel really simple and like, yeah, go for it. I'll finish in a second.
She's such a character. She's such a wonderful character.
Yeah.
And such a natural teacher.
Exactly.
In the end, where she's talking to the school kids. Where is she now? What is her story? What's Ellie's story now?
Yeah. Well, let me just go back to the animation.
Yeah, please.
No, it's so we had this idea to like create animation that felt really, like really accessible, but I also wanted it to feel a little bit like have like a human touch to it, like to feel like drawn and painted, so it didn't feel super technical and cold and like scientific. Like we wanted it to feel really human, and that's how we arrived at like that kind of painterly element, like the vibe of it. It's really hand drawn kind of feeling. Yeah, it's beautiful. This woman, Lottie Kingslake, is the animator. She's based in the UK. And she had done animation for a series on Vimeo. If you want to check it out, it's called Universe in Verse. And it's poetry about science that's set to animation. It's really beautiful. Okay, so Ellie now is actually, she is so cool. She is going back to Marshall University to get her physics, her master's in physics, but is also teaching. So she's going to be she's going to be teaching Intro to Astronomy as she's also getting her master's. And yesterday was her first class that she taught as a teacher, teaching Intro to Astronomy to freshman students at Marshall University, which is exactly what she should be doing. Yeah.
What a wonderful, that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, she's a wonderful teacher. She really is.
Well, and I noticed, I don't know if it's already happened or if it's coming up here. It might be this Friday. You have a screening with the Astronomical Society with her conference. Yes. I mean, that's going to be amazing, I would imagine.
Yeah, the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, they're a big group out west. They came to see the film at one of our screenings in San Francisco and really loved it. So they asked if they could screen it for their conference this week. And Ellie's going to do a Q&A afterwards. And we got Jill Tarter to do the intro. Jill Tarter's kind of like the godmother of SETI. You know, she's like the first scientist to kind of in the field of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So it's going to be really
great. Wasn't the Jodie Foster, that's the Contact character?
Yeah, exactly. So Contact with Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster. The Jodie Foster character is based on Jill Tarter, which that movie's, I went back and watched it several times while making this film, and it was a big inspiration.
I was going to say, with all the Carl Sagan quotes as well.
Yes.
Amazing.
So
have you screened this yet for the Green Bank community? Have they been able to see?
Yeah, we actually did. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we went back to Green Bank, and they hosted a screening at their science center. It was like almost 150, 200 people showed up from town. Almost all of the characters were there, and like it was so sweet. Like all the townspeople, I think like they were a little jaded. Not jaded's not the right word, but like there's been like news stories and like tons of like little bits online about Green Bank, but like nobody ever really sticks around long enough to tell like to tell like a long story that really like dives in. And I felt like they really appreciated that the film was more than just like a little like click, we're used to seeing clickbait about Green Bank. And it was really nice. Their reception was just like, oh, wow, like you really got it. And I was like, oh, thank you. It was really sweet. Like, and I don't know, they just all had such like a warm response afterwards. It's nice.
Oh, that's got to be a relief.
It's a huge relief. There's nothing worse.
I mean, like a lot different than a festival screening to go back to the hometown and play it there.
I mean, I'm just like, as I said to Nelson, I was like, you can like get all the awards in the world. I mean, which we have not yet by any means, but like, if the people you make the film about don't like it, then yeah, you're really screwed. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask real quick. Again, you were very forthright with knowing you learned a lot on this. Did you also learn a lot about this electromagnetic allergy syndrome? Yeah. And I know I just got it wrong for the description of it, but that community, I mean, I thought that was a fascinating story, parallel story that was happening, how people are moving there to get away from that.
Yeah, there's a character in the film, Sue, who has electrohypermagnetic sensitivity. There's a whole range of things that humans are allergic to or affected by, right? And this one syndrome is, if you're affected by radio waves in the atmosphere. So everything gives off radio waves, but like cell phones, of course, and cell towers and Wi-Fi are particularly, strong and affect people in certain ways. And so, yeah, there's a whole community of people that are moving to Green Bank because they feel better there. They feel like if they're away from like all of these electromagnetic waves in the environment, they feel better. It's tricky because they don't feel validated though, because there's conflicting research about it. And here in the United States, it's not like officially like recognized in like whatever the medical handbook is called. But in other places it is, right? So like in Sweden and Canada it is. And I don't think it's like, I get a lot of questions from people like, well, is it real or is it not real? And honestly, like, I don't care. I'm like, if they, like, part of me is curious, but like, it doesn't really matter, because if somebody is feeling better and is able to live a better life and be a better human because they're away from it, all the more power to them. You know what I mean? And honestly, like, we could all probably be a little better off if we like turn down the noise of like all of our devices, probably.
And that's an interesting take in that you did a great job of having a sympathetic view of these folks, because you could be very cynical, like, come on, but learning about them, seeing their, the plight of them, whether it be in how legitimate or not, I think it's legitimate, but to see that they do have this like mecca, so to speak, of where to like this place where they can find refuge, it's really beautifully done. And by the end, you're like, well, like you just said, well, good. If they seem happy, that seems like a happy, they've solved their problems in Green.
Exactly. And like I said, it's not causing anybody any issues. Like, I mean, even at the screening, there was some, at the screening, some of the people at the screening in town were like, oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so happy I saw this film because I always live next door to Sue or someone like Sue, like they're their neighbors, but they even felt like they didn't really understand like the electrosensitives, and they felt like the film gave them a little bit more empathy towards like what they were going through, which is cool. Yeah.
Descriptive how you tell that story.
Well, one last question I have also is just with the whole thing about technology not being used there in the same capacity. Did this affect your filmmaking at all, or did you have to change your approach because like, hey, we can't use cell phones while we're filming in this area, or maybe it affects other technology that you're using? Did that change anything at all?
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. I mean, first of all, you have to like fly into an airport that's at the minimum 3 hours away from Green Bank, and then you have to drive through mountains where there's no cell service. And then once you get there, of course, there's no cell service. And so just like from like a practical producing standpoint, like having to make plans with like your characters and like set up a shoot when you like can't do things on the fly was definitely like a challenge. Having to call people on their landlines and be like, hey, meet me at the library in 10 minutes. And like, then you just wait for them and hope they show up. So the producing, Yeah, you just wait. You're like, nope, they're not here yet. That is the practical producing part of it. Of course, we couldn't use wireless lav, so yeah, most of the scenes, some of the scenes we were able to get away with it because we were far enough away from the telescope, but predominantly no, we always had to boom, and we could not use wireless lav, so that was different. And then also really any kind of device that our crew you would normally use on a shoot, like say like a monitor that like is wireless, we couldn't use. So yeah, there was like tons of ways we had to be very old school about our approach of capturing sound and footage.
Well, you did a phenomenal job.
Agreed. It's such a pleasure to watch it.
It really was just absolutely amazing. And, I had seen Brooklyn Castle. I've watched it again. Just amazing continuation of your documentary career. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are you guys going to be at the festival?
We'll be there.
Yeah. We will.
Hopefully we'll get to see you in person.
Yeah, very excited to have you here in person to talk to people and answer questions. And yeah, you'll find hopefully the Sidewalk Film Festival has very enthusiastic crowds. So
I've heard that. That's especially when I want to come. I could tell, like, there's just you could tell when a festival like really gets people together, and I have this feeling that Sidewalk it feels like that already. So I'm really
it's the one. Well, I can't wait for you to see it and to meet you again in person. But thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.